for the conclusion of our story, Teacher Accused, the story we've been building all this week about a kindergarten teacher at the G.H. Jewett School in Bucksport charged with assaulting one of his 5-year-old students. First, let's review. Thursday, October 20th, 2022, teacher Christian Coble says he used his body to block one of his students from entering his classroom and nudges the student out of the way with his leg so he could close the door. He says he did it to protect his other students because this particular student we're calling Jimmy had a history of violence against his peers and is acting defiant in the hallway. This is the incident that would eventually lead to Coble's arrest. But more happened. The next day, Friday, October 21st, Jimmy's parents come into the school for a meeting. And according to Coble, it's agreed that Jimmy will be rushed to the top of the special ed referral list. Also, according to Coble, nobody says anything about the alleged assault on Jimmy the previous day. The following Thursday, October 27th, Coble says Jimmy has another violent outburst, seriously frightening and upsetting his classmates. Frustrated with what he sees as a lack of support and action from his administration, Coble sends a letter home to parents urging them to go to the admins with any concerns they have. The next day, he is suspended. 3 weeks later, Coble is called in for a so-called results meeting, thinking he'll be reprimanded for the letter he sent home, but allowed to return to his classroom. Instead, he says he is shown the video of the hallway incident 4 weeks prior and told he's being recommended to the school board for dismissal. 5 days later, he is arrested and charged with endangering the welfare of a child and aggravated assault on a child under the age of 6.
It was all this crazy, dark world that I was just like, what is happening right now?
Christian Coble describes the days and weeks that followed his arrest as surreal. He says he fell into a deep depression, lost 30 pounds, and felt largely isolated. But a few of his supporters remained steadfast.
I had a number of people lined up who were prepared to testify at trial on his behalf.
And Coble's attorney, John Goodman, says he knew from the start that the case would go all the way to trial because his client was adamant that he was innocent and would not accept any plea deal. Goodman also knew the stakes were high. On the most serious charge alone, aggravated assault on a young child, a conviction could result in a sentence of up to 5 years in prison.
At times, that really frustrated me because I was worried for him if things went really badly for us, but I really respected and admired, and still do, his resolve that he knew he hadn't committed a crime and he wasn't going to plead guilty to it. You have the video, you've seen the video, it's a minor little push. The kid wasn't hurt, you know, he was laughing at the time, and the DA's office didn't have to charge it that way. They could have just charged it as a misdemeanor simple assault, but the prosecutor who initially had the case brought it to a grand jury and got an indictment for the felony, simply based on the age.
And so they waited for a trial date, and waited and waited and waited, almost 2 full years. With the trial finally scheduled to start in August of 2024, the jury is selected, the prosecution and defense have all their witnesses lined up, when the case takes a surprising turn.
It was dismissed with prejudice.
Meaning?
It's over.
That's right, dismissed with prejudice. Now, in layman's terms, that's a final judgment that means a case can never be brought back up again. It's dismissed permanently. And with prejudice means that it's based not on some technicality, but on the facts or merits of the case. For a defendant, it's the next best thing to an acquittal. Now, a ruling like this can come from a judge, but in this case, the motion was filed by the district attorney's office. That's right, the same DA's office that originally filed the most serious charges possible in a case like this. So how did that happen?
I reviewed the evidence. I would not have approved this case for prosecution myself.
For one thing, there was a changing of the guard not long after the charges were filed. In a refreshingly candid interview, current DA Robert Granger tells us when he took office in January of 2023, 2 months after Coble was charged, he inherited a backlog of 1,500 cases from the previous district attorney. Carly Rieger, the assistant DA handling Cobal's case, then parted ways with the office. The case was reassigned to Granger's deputy DA, Toph Tofflin. Tofflin, burdened with a heavy caseload, did not get around to looking at all the evidence until right before the trial was about to begin. And even then, only at the urging of Cobal's attorney did he look at the video of the incident and show it to DA Granger.
It was my opinion and the opinion of my assistants who also reviewed the video that the conduct didn't amount to something that should be prosecuted.
The judge agreed, case dismissed.
A dark cloud immediately lifted that was over my head for almost the last 2 years, and it was basically like, wow, my life has options again. Like, you know, in addition to that, it was like, wow, I've been vindicated. Like, you know, like the truth has finally come out.
Even after the loss of a job he loved, his reputation dragged through the mud, nearly 2 years of waiting and worrying, Cobal chooses to focus on the positive. Lots of people would be bitter about that and angry. You don't seem to be.
I could let myself get there, but it'll do me no good. I'm angry, like try to get even with people. Like that's just, I mean, that's not who I am. That's not how I taught.
Do you miss teaching?
Every single day.
During the 2 years it took this case to make its way through the system, Cobal's teaching certificate expired. But he says despite everything that happened, he'd like to get recertified and get back into education. And while it's unlikely he'd ever teach again at his old school, a piece of him still remains there. A bench he built himself and decorated with his own children's handprints. It's called a buddy bench. Any child who's feeling left out during recess can sit on it, and other children are encouraged to join them or invite them to play. A symbol of friendship, kindness, and inclusion. A legacy. Now, we do want to mention, while the criminal case was dismissed, the question of whether Cobal may have crossed the line by school standards does remain up for debate. Under the terms of their severance agreement, neither Cobal nor the school is allowed to say whether he was fired or resigned. We did ask if someone with the Maine Department of Education would watch the video and give us their opinion. They declined. And finally, let's not forget about the young child at the center of this story. Cobal says even though it got him suspended, that letter he sent home accomplished one good thing. He was told the next day Jimmy was transferred to another classroom where he got some individual help. A reminder, if you missed any part of this series this week, you can watch all 4 parts together on News Center Maine Plus, our free streaming service available on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV. And also, the panel of former teachers that appeared throughout this series had a lot more to say about the state of Maine's schools and the factors that drove them to quit the profession. We're going to hear more from them tonight on 207 at 7.